Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. My guest in today's show is Greg Campobasso, an award-winning filmmaker, Emmy-nominated casting director with a career that spans 3 decades. He is also the author of the best-selling book, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. I'll be talking with Craig about his latest book, the UFO Hotspot Compendium, all the places to visit before you die or are abducted. It is the definitive UFO hunter's bucket list of legendary and active UFO and alien hotspots across America and Canada. Craig Campobasso, welcome to Paranormal Yacker.
Thank you so much, Stan. How are you?
Your book, Craig, which has a title that's a perfect fit for its contents, is based on firsthand information obtained from MUFON's trained investigators and researchers, interviews with people who have had extraordinary UFO experiences, and your own personal travel to many of the locations. For those who may not be familiar with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, could you, Craig, explain what it is, its history, purpose, goals?
Well, MUFON is basically a civilian-run organization that goes out and investigate UFO sightings, things like that. So when people usually see a UFO or have a strange experience, which could include extraterrestrials as such, they call MUFON and they report the sightings. Now, MUFON has MUFON state directors. They also have assistant state directors. They have MUFON teams in different states. So whoever is closest will go out and investigate and then put all their findings into a file, which go into the MUFON file. So it could be a one-off, or it could be something that's ongoing. If there are crafts that are constantly being seen, are they able to get them on film? Are they able to collect as much evidence as possible? But what's great about the Hotspot book is that a lot of this is already, a lot of these things, we have an end to each of the stories of what MUFON's investigations were, or in some cases, Project Blue Book, because some of these cases went back a while. And then some MUFON investigators in some of the cases like Shag Harbor, for instance, in Canada, Chris Stiles was a MUFON member when he went back and started researching it all over again in 1995. And also MUFON investigators Tony Angiola and Ben Moss went back in and dug up all this new information on the Socorro case and wrote a book about it. Chris has a book about it as well. So we've got a lot of updated information with the stories, and at the end of the chapter, we give you the final results of all of those investigations. And then, of course, what can you do when you go visit that site besides visiting that site? What can you do in the area, and so on? And we give you all the information, phone numbers, websites, all that good stuff. And if it was a particular spot, for instance, like Socorro, we give you the coordinates, so you could go right to the coordinates to the exact spot where the two little small aliens and their ship were when Lonnie Zamora saw them.
The UFO Hotspot Compendium is a guided tour of 35 of the most remarkable UFO-related sites, the when, where, backstory, investigations, and things to do when visiting the site. And I found that great going through your book with that. That's a great addition to it. Now, with so many UFO sightings reported yearly, what criteria or methodology did you use to hone in on the ones you've included in your book?
The head of MUFON sent out a letter to all the MUFON state directors asking them to nominate their favorite UFO hotspot. And then I compiled all of those. Of course, we couldn't include them all, but so we focus on 12 of the biggest stories, right, in a little more in depth, and then go into into about 23 or so more stories where you still get the story and what ended up happening and where to go and all of those kinds of things as well. So we could fit as many as we could into the book. That's how everything got compiled. There were a few places that I've been that aren't on anybody's radar, so I included those in there, one being the Bradshaw Ranch in the Verde Valley outside of Sedona.
Giant rock located on sacred Native American tribal land in Landers, California, is where it was reported a Venusian ET landed in his spaceship, met with an individual, and shared the blueprints for constructing a rejuvenation building. Could you elaborate on that ET landing and the rejuvenation building?
Sure. So Giant Rock Airport is called Giant Rock because it's the largest freestanding boulder on the planet. There was a man named Frank Kreitzer who used to run it. George Van Tassel knew him. When this man passed away, George wanted a more metaphysical life, he said, communing with nature. So him and his wife, they moved to Giant Rock. They moved into where Frank Kreitzer lived, which was beneath the rock. Frank had dynamited out a whole big giant room, and that's where he lived. George slept outside on a cot because, of course, it's the middle of the desert and it's hot. And so George began doing meditations in the early 52, and he began channeling space beings. And then about a year later, he was sleeping outside, and he said he always knew when somebody was coming outside because the dogs would go crazy and start barking. He said, I just woke up, and I looked and I saw a man approaching. The dogs were not barking at all. And I went and I met him. He described him as 5'6", short blonde hair, and he was in some kind of silver uniform. And the man introduced himself as Salganda and said that he was Venusian. I think how they describe themselves as being Etherians, meaning they're in the next dimension, but they can still come into this dimension. So they're really fourth dimensional beings. So George had worked for Howard Hughes, I think it was Donald Douglas, was it Donald Douglas or Douglas Aircraft? Douglas Aircraft. So he was very fascinated with how things met. It didn't surprise him that somebody was there because he had been channeling these beings for some time. So he went on the ship and he describes the ship, which I describe in the book, and he learned how that was. And so Salganda gave him the blueprint to build this building called the Integratron and told him where to build it, which is literally 3 to 5 minutes away from Giant Rock by car. So now he had to come up with, how am I going to raise the money to build this thing? And Howard Hughes gave him 20 grand to get started, but he decided, I'm going to start having UFO space conventions here at Giant Rock. So all of the contactees of that era would go to Giant Rock and they would get up on the platform and they would talk about their experiences, including George. Dr. Frank Stranges, who wrote the book Stranger at the Pentagon, actually emceed all of those events way back in the day. And then people could sit and chat with these people who were meeting with humans from around our galaxy who it was told to them that they lived on the interior of their planet. So that's the story in a nutshell. Of course, I'm very close with the sisters that own the Integratron now, and so I had access to all the Integratron archives, and so we have pictures in there that have never been seen before. And I work alongside the Giant Rock historian. So, for instance, this is one of my most favorite places, Dan. So if people really want to visit it, I suggest that you can hire Barbara Harris, the historian, to take you out for night sky watching to look for UFOs. You'll get chairs. I'm not sure if she has night vision binoculars. You can ask her. If not, try and rent some or buy a pair when you go. And then the Integratron, if you plan on going, you can't just show up, you have to have a reservation for a sound bath, which is on the second floor with the singing bowls. The second floor is a sound chamber, and all of that beautiful music going around, you feel like you're levitating, and it really does feel like your whole cellular structure is being rejuvenated. Although the Integratron was never turned on when George was 95% finished, Salganda told him not to turn it on because the people of Earth were not ready for it.
The Bradshaw Ranch in the Verde Valley, which you mentioned earlier, is near Sedona, Arizona, and it was a hotspot for UFOs, ETs, albino Bigfoot sightings, orb storms, interdimensional portals, alien abductions, and missing time. Did its proximity to the giant vortex that is Sedona somehow influence the paranormal activities at the ranch? If so, how?
Sedona is one big giant vortex in itself. Some like Bell Rock is a masculine vortex, Cathedral Rock is masculine and feminine. So when you go to each vortex, you're going to receive different information. I love going to Bell Rock because it's a psychic vortex. It really just sheds away all of the negativity that you may be holding from living in a big city, and it increases your psychic ability. Now, out there in the Verde Valley, Bob Bradshaw bought 140 some acres of land. This is in the middle of nowhere. Now, I did a show last week where the actual interviewer was a psychic, and she said that that particular area where the Bradshaw Ranch is it has two energy cycles. One goes clockwise, one goes counterclockwise, and that's why the veils in that area, you can literally see into it. Now, you can't see it with the naked eye, but if you hold your cell phone up, you can see it. If you, back in the day of the Bradshaw Ranch, if Linda Bradshaw or her son or Tom Dongo, who is the leading Sedona UFO researcher, he was there researching with her on the ranch for about 4 years. They had video cameras with the big VHS tapes back then and regular cameras. So if you held even the viewfinder up, you might see into another dimension. They saw into other dimensions where once they saw a dinosaur, another time they saw Big Girl, who is the albino Bigfoot, and above her was a giant flying saucer. There were many other things that were captured. One I put in the book where they were snapping pictures because they were feeling energy around them, and they actually caught a man who was not even there on camera in solid form. And one misstep of the camera, you know how you're sometimes holding a camera and you hit the button and it takes a picture of the ground or your leg? That happened, and by somebody's leg was a very small UFO spaceship that kind of looked like a jack with the spikes coming out, and it was all really a beautiful blue color. So on that ranch, they experienced reptilians, grays, angelics. They had a portal between the ranch house and the homestead house, which was a tree. And Linda said this is where all those energies came to and from. And this is where that psychic believed also that it was a double vortex for negative and positive. And this interdimensional. Now, I've been there twice, Stan. The first time I went, you can only take your car so far, and if you don't have a guide to take you there, there's no way you're going to find it. It's in the middle of the desert, in the middle of no man's land. We had to leave the car and hike in for about 40 minutes, and I have to say, on that hike in, I am a very sensitive person to otherworldly energies, paranormal energies. I could feel them, and everything in my body was saying, turn around around and go back that way and do that. The second time I went, I didn't feel that way so much. I really felt that I just wanted to observe it and see where all of these things happen, because it's such a huge property.
In Aurora, Texas in 1897, 6 years before the invention of the airplane, a metallic flying craft had crashed there. And according to what the local newspaper reported, the pilot of the craft was not an inhabitant of this world. Could you tell me more about this incident and why it was decided to give him a Christian burial?
Well, see, that was one of the most fascinating things. So I was trying to place myself in the late 1800s. And if I was living in a town that had just a little over 300 people, that was it. You farmed and everybody knew each other's business because they all knew each other. In around that time, I don't remember the exact amount, but there was in upwards of over 100 sightings of these sort of blimpy, oval-looking silver craft in the sky. Now, if you're somebody that has never seen anything in the air, I wonder what their speculation was. Did they think it could be something from somewhere else? Did they have any preconceived notions? If it really was a large Christian town, would they have been very open to an otherworldly visitor? We really don't know the answers to these questions, but it was very early in the morning when people were farming their lands around 6 a.m. when they saw one of these coming down. It went through the town square, and it's crashed right into Judge Proctor's water tower on his land and dispersed into a bunch of different pieces, the craft and the actual water tower. Now, Judge Proctor was out of town, so nobody was home on his residence. The closest people rushed to see. And now there's two accounts. One account says that the creature was dead when they got there. Another one said they brought it into the barn to try and revive it, but it died later that day. But here's the cool thing about this story is we don't have military, government, cover up, anything like that. We have true factual people's eyewitnesses who told the newspapers, who wrote it as they heard it. So we have all of those things, which I also put in the book for people to see. But what was interesting is that the being was a very thin being. It had lizard-like skin, so it wasn't like a gray, but it did have black eyes and it oozed black blood, and it was wearing a very skin-tight silver uniform. It's amazing that maybe they thought all of God's creatures are one in the same is the only thing that where I came to the conclusion. And so they gave the being a Christian burial and put it in their cemetery. And it was marked with a big stone, and they actually etched in kind of what its ship looked like, right, into the stone. And that's where he was buried for a long, long time until the story got resurged many, I think it was maybe the 70s. And then people started descending and wanting to dig it up and all of that. So there's many stories that the people that own the cemetery or other people move the body somewhere else so it would be safe and sacred. The wonderful show that I used to love to watch with Bill Burns, UFO Hunters, they went out there and they did the ground penetrating radar, and it shows that what they buried it in is collapsed, but it doesn't show that anything is there. So they're not certain if something was there or not. So it's one of, to me, I think it's such a great, fascinating story that who evidently, wherever these beings were from, they must have come in a larger ship and and they were really going over all of Texas. And you know where a lot of the information is about all of these sightings that were also across America were in the Farmer's Almanac back in the day.
Created being Valiant Thor, a Venusian star being, arrived in Alexandria, Virginia in 1957, departed in 1960, returned to Earth in 1961, and has been here ever since. The landing of Valiant Thor was perhaps the first documented landing of a human-type alien by military officials. Could you, Craig, expand on that?
Behind me, this is the short film I made on that story called Stranger at the Pentagon. It's from the book by Dr. Frank Stranges. Frank Stranges was a Christian minister, but he spoke about UFOs and the Bible. He never spoke a mean word about anyone. He was probably one of the kindest men you could ever meet. And back in 1959, over the Christmas holidays, he was doing a 2-week speaking engagement at a local church. He was speaking one particular night, UFOs and the Bible. Interestingly enough, when Dr. Frank passed away, his wife gave me a lot of his artifact to use because we're going to be making the big feature film, Stranger at the Pentagon. In his Bible were a bunch of notes, and the note from way back when on UFOs and the Bible were still stuffed in his Bible where he kept all his notes. And so it was very fascinating for me. But there was a high-level clearance secretary. She was in charge of all the secretaries. She had befriended Valiant Thor at the Pentagon, and he asked her to go and fetch Dr. Frank and bring him so that he could meet him. Now, when putting and piecing puzzles together, I believe that bringing Dr. Frank to him is Dr. Frank would then be a grassroots campaign to let the world know that he really was here, because the government had decided not to release that information or why he was here and those types of things. So they had us maybe a half-hour meeting, I believe. Dr. Frank didn't see him again until he returned in '61, and they began a slow friendship. And then in 1967, he invited him for the first time on board his craft called Victor 1, which is this ship right here, and those are the blueprints. And so he was able to then meet his 4 vice commanders and a lot of the other crew and learn a lot more about him, his mission, why he was here. From that, he wrote about it, and he would tour the world speaking about that. And 2 of the vice commanders would always accompany him to protect him, because back then he did have a lot of threats that were on him. Once somebody put some stuff in his food, little things like that. I don't want to go into the dark stuff, but anyway, they were there and they protected him. But Valiant Thor is still here today, and his book Stranger at the Pentagon has all the 287 locations where the Victor class saucers are. People are interested in that, they can go to strangeratthepentagon.com, watch a short film there. All of Dr. Frank's out of print books and everything are there, and everything is donation based and goes towards making the feature film. But it's really great, and the Victor 1 itself houses 200 people, and it's double-deckered, and there are 287 of those, and then there is a big starship that Valiant Thor designed and built in outer space above Earth as well.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to buy the UFO Hotspot Compendium, all the places to visit before you die, or Are Abducted, again, a great title, I compliment you for that. How do they go about doing that?
If they would like me to autograph it to them using their name and sign it with a little message, they can do that through my website, which is autobiographyofAnet.com. On the homepage, I have my 4-book series, The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. And then if you want either the ET Species Almanac or the UFO Hotspot Compendium, click on Other Books in the tab, and then you could purchase those books there. It's Christmas time coming, so you can buy these gifts for your friends, and if you want me to sign them to your friends and mail them to you so I can give them out as Christmas gifts, just email me through the website and say, hey, Craig, I just bought 3 books. Sign one to Johnny, Susie, and Jimmy, right? Then I'd be happy to do that.
Excellent suggestion. Craig Campobasso, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. I wish you much deserved success with your book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stan. Pleasure being here.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of my interview with Craig Campobasso. In part 2, I'll be talking with him about various UFO hotspots in the USA and Canada, paranormal phenomena at the Skinwalker Ranch, the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, and the first reported cases of humans being approached by ant-like creatures. So that you don't miss it, have access to past interviews, and be amongst the first to receive new interviews when released, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.